This is the first clip in our DVD, and so I thought it would be interesting to talk in general what the real-world certifier is, and then discuss, again in general terms, what are the most common tests performed by the real-world certifier. What do you think?
Sounds like a good idea to me, Daryl.
People say, what is the real-world certifier? Well, it's a tester that does all of the most common tests that you would expect it to perform on cables, like give you an accurate cable length, tell you whether the cable has an open, short, a split pair. If it does have a split pair, how many feet down the cable is that split pair? How many feet down the cable is that open? In other words, you expect some good troubleshooting tools. But above and beyond that, the real-world certifier takes a look at some speed components of the cable. And it can tell you what your cable category is. So if you're pulling Cat5e cable, it can tell you it's Cat5e cable. And will also even predict the speed of data that you can send down that cable. Now, in addition to that cable testing, we also can troubleshoot your network devices. And we can test the cable in conjunction with a network device. So it's quite a package. And the package includes a pouch, a zippered pouch, 2 jumper cables, the real-world certifier main unit, the real-world certifier probe, certification stickers, a tablet that not too many people use really, because most people store their tests in the memory of the tester, and then when they get back to their office they print that out. You can store up to 250 tests in the real-world certifier, and they print it out by using this cable that allows you to connect the main unit to your PC running Excel. We actually import the data from the tester into Excel, and you can either give your customer just the Excel file if you'd like, or you can print out all the spreadsheets and give them a sheet on every cable that you tested. You get a very good instruction manual that defines most of the terms that we're going to be using, and you get the software, which is really nothing more than an enhanced spreadsheet. You don't have to do a major install on your computer. Why don't we take everybody through a real-world certifier test, Joe?
That's a good idea, Daryl. Now we have the certifier has just been turned on. Now I could have turned on the backlight, but since this is a well-lit room, we'll just look at the screen without the backlight. It asks us if we want to test cables or network ports or review printer memory. So let's test cables. Now our first choice here, do we want to do a real-world certify or a basic cable test? Now our basic cable test, we do everything everybody else does, split pairs, opens, shorts. But in addition, we also do distance to split pairs. In other words, if there's a split pair in the cable, we can help you find out where it is and repair that cable. Now, when we go to Real World Certify, it does all of the basic cable tests, plus it also tests crosstalk, and it tests the cable type, and allows us to predict the speed that the cable is going to run at. So here we go, Real World Certify. It tells us to uncoil the cable. Now the tester can actually tell if the cable is coiled or not, because if it's coiled, there's more crosstalk, and it makes the cable category be a little less than it really is.
You know, here's really the first big Y in the road where we are different than the other guys, isn't it? Because how many cable installers use that last 20 feet as a coil, stuffed in the wall, maybe with a tie wrap around it? We'll show you the difference in the performance of your cable if you use techniques like that, and it really makes you a better installer when you have a tool like this.
Right, and you know, coiling the cable is probably all right for 100 megabit networks, but when you get to the gigabit, where performance is more critical. Now we're going to plug in the cable. It tells us to plug into the left port, and we press more of the test. Now it asks us if it's a patch cable or a solid cable. The solid cables are the ones normally found in the wall, and the patch cables are the ones that connect from the wall outlet to the equipment, which may be a PC or a switch or a hub.
And you had a nice way of figuring out whether you were dealing with a patch cable or not. with the magnifying glass, right? If you saw a stranded cable, it's a patch cable.
Right, that's very nice about these connectors. You can just look at them and you can see the end of the wires.
Yeah.
And I just use a little magnifying glass and I can look at them and know right away. And also you can pretty much tell by how flexible the wire is.
So it is a patch cable if it's flexible.
Alright, so now we tell it's the patch cable and it begins the test. First it tests for split pairs, then it tests the next, which is near end crosstalk, then it tests the effects, which is the far end crosstalk, and we do these tests digitally so it's moving right along, and now we're testing for the speed of the capability of each of the pairs. So that now that that's complete, it tells us to plug in the probe at the far end of the cable. And it tells us that the red light will come on when the test is done. Now, we happen to have the far end of the cable is right here, but this could be in a wiring closet some distance away, and you may have to be able to find that cable. So the first thing we do is that we've placed a tone on the cable to help us locate it in the wiring closet. And then once we've located the cable, now this audio probe is also the test fixture for the far end of the cable. And the little red light has come on to tell us that the test is complete, and it also tells us a straight through cable. Now that that test is done, we can unplug the probe.
You know, Joe, I can't tell you how many calls I get with people thanking us for putting that red lead there, because they walk to the far end of the building. And if it wasn't for the red lead, they'd have to leave the remote there, walk all the way back to the main unit, see if the test was done. Here we tell them, right there in the remote area, the test is done. Simply unplug it, stick it in your pocket, and come back to the main unit.
Well, that's where we've been very lucky. We've had a lot of customer input because, you know, the customers realize that we're trying to create a very cost-effective piece of equipment. And they've been very good to help us make these little features that have made a big difference to them.
Sure.
Because to them it's all about time. How do I save my time? How do I get the best out of my time?
Got it.
So that was a suggestion from a customer.
So there we are. We're done. Now we can take our probe, go back to the main unit.
That's right. So now we go back to the main unit and we can see that this is a pretty good cable. It's above a 5E cable. It's not quite a 6. And you can see that it's closer to the 6 than the 5E, so you know it's a pretty good cable.
And of course we have passed in big letters.
Yeah.
So you know right away that it's passed all the basic tests, and here we give you your speed, or your cable category.
Yeah, and the nice thing about it is it's a graphics output, so if the customer wants to see this, it's in a form where the customer can understand it.
Now, you know, we should point out here that a lot of the early real-world certifier customers are now seeing a totally different tester. In the early days, they would have seen screen after screen of data prior to coming to the cable category screen. But to speed things up, what we've done now is we've bypassed all of that. We haven't shown it to the customer unless they want to see it. If they want to see it, they have the choice to review it or save it in memory. So it's a big difference for our early customers.
Right, and that was a input from our customers.
Right.
They said that, look, if it's just passed, that's what I need to know.
Right.
All right. Now, if the customer wants to review the data, he can. We allow him to review it, so he presses review, and the data is there.
Sure.
And then, again, you see the screen where it gives you the cable type. It shows you that it's capable of a gigabit, and it's really good cable. So you can see that it's far beyond the spec for a minimum spec for 1,000. All right, this is a 50-foot cable, and the delay is 76 nanoseconds. And the skew is 5 nanoseconds, which is the difference in delay between pairs.
Well, you know at this point I always like to grab the tablet, don't I? Now I know customers don't use this tablet too much because they store their results in memory and they print it out when they get back to their office on their computer's printer. But what's handy about this tablet is you could follow the screens and fill out the data if you wanted to give your customer a quick takeaway receipt for the work that you did per cable. Here you would fill in cable category by filling in the graph. You would fill in the predicted speed, the cable length, but here's where we're at right now, the delay and the skew. You show the delay of the cable at 76 nanoseconds. The tablet says you've got 555 to play with. So right away we know we have a pretty good cable. You show the skew at being at 5 nanoseconds, and of course the standard allows for 50. So right away we can start sensing we have a good cable.
Yes, and if we were out of spec, the meter would have immediately flagged the error.
Okay.
So now let's continue with our review. And here is a summary of all the tests that were performed. It says the delay, which is the time it takes the data to travel from one end of the cable, is okay. The skew, which is the difference in delay between pairs, because data is sent on several pairs at the same time, and the data all has to arrive at the receiving unit at the same time. If there's too much difference in time